I was in junior high school at the time, and around that same time, there was a fellow in my class named Alex Lifeson, and we both sat at the back of the class, and he was really funny. And we sort of connected, and he played guitar. And before you know it, we were starting to jam together. And I didn't know at the time that I would spend the rest of my life with this crazy Serbian guy. And he was actually in a band called Rush. And so I wasn't sort of a founding member, but I was sort of just a pal. And they were scheduled to do a show at a local drop-in center, which was in the basement of a church. And their bass player couldn't make it for some reason, and Al called me up in a panic saying, "Do you think you could play the gig with us?" And I said, "Well, sure." So I went down, I learned the songs that afternoon. I think we only knew about 4 songs anyway. We just kept playing over and over again. And we did the gig, and then we went to the local deli for French fries and gravy, which was the tradition of the band in that day. And that's how my career with Al started.
I mean, you're such an accomplished musician with so many instruments now, and this is not blowing smoke at you, it's just obvious. You're a terrific musician. Do you think you were born with this talent, or it's something that one way or the other you absorbed coming up?
It's a good question. I mean, I think people are born with aptitudes. Whether they ever mine those aptitudes or discover what those aptitudes are seems to be sometimes a random act of fate. I think I did have an aptitude for music, and once I stumbled onto the guitar, it just sort of took over my life. And it was one of the first things I ever did as a young kid that I was good at. You know, I tried sports. I was fairly hopeless at sports. And, you know, I was sort of a quiet, you know, reserved guy, very nerdy in my early years. And then I discovered this instrument, and before I know it, I was mastering it by ear. And obviously that must come from, you know, something in me. And years later, I found out that my dad played an instrument in the old country. So I like to think I came by the talent honestly.
Right. But you said something that interests me, because I find this is often true. You said it was something at which you were very good.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally you find something you're good at. You're not particularly good at soccer or sports, you said.
Right.
And I find it very natural you'd gravitate to that and say, well, I'm good at that. That's something that I can build an identity around.
Yeah, exactly. You know, playing music made me feel good about myself. And, you know, when I look back now, I see it, you know, I was a fairly quiet, isolated kid that didn't have a lot of outside connection with the world. And then I find music, and I find that I'm good at it, so it made me feel good about myself. So, you know, it was natural that I was going to run with that.
And you've been together as a band for, what, more than 4 decades?
Yeah.
Pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
The same group of people holding together. And your fan base is well known as maybe the most loyal fan base in all of rock and roll.
Mm.
Now, my question is, what's the secret to this longevity?
I think I was blessed with meeting 2 people that at their core were considerate people. As far back as I remember, I can't think of a single ego trip that either of my partners ever went on. We just are blessed with nice personalities, you know. The curse of being Canadian is being nice, right? We always say sorry.
Right.
So I think that's helped a lot, frankly, because, and there's only 3 of us, and 2 against 1 isn't fair, so we never gang up on each other. And when 2 of us do gang up on the other one, even if it's in humor, we always feel a little guilty afterwards. And at the core of it, we share a rock-solid friendship. Early on, we would have these discussions. For example, when someone had written a song, say Alex and I, only 2 of the 3 of the members had written a song, and we had to divide the song for publishing credits and things like that. And we would get in these conversations about, well, you wrote that part, I wrote this part, and it just seemed dumb. So we made a decision very early on. He said, look, the three of us are working on these songs equally. Whether the germ of the idea came from one or two, who cares? They're a product of the three of us. So let's just agree right now that we will split everything, you know, a third, a third, a third, and we never have to talk about it again. And we said, agreed. And so we never, ever had to have that discussion again. And I think that was a big, you know, weight taken off our shoulders, really. It allowed us to focus on the music and not worry about those other things. Now, also, along the way, there have been difficult times. I'm not going to say that it was always sunny and cheery. Before we did our 2112 album, our Crest of Steel album was not doing well, and support for us out on the road was drying up. And the record company thought, well, maybe this was a bad investment. These guys are just getting too weird. And we were sort of faced with, you know, maybe we got one more record they're going to do for us and we'll see what happens. And so it was difficult, but we didn't lose our sense of humor through it all. And we came back by making the 2112 album, which ended up being a breakthrough record for us. And so it just sort of helped us gird ourselves in a way and stick together. But I think the friendship thing is no small part of it.
Well, you used a phrase I hadn't heard before. You said, well, the three of you think of yourselves as the world's smallest symphony orchestra. For someone who's watching and listening to this and doesn't know you or your music very well, what's the inside joke of we're the world's smallest symphony orchestra?
Well, okay, so to the uninitiated, we began life as a three-piece rock band, you know, playing quite loudly. And the music was energetic, and as we got older, we started adding more and more complex arrangements. And then prog rock was starting to become a thing, and they were bringing these instruments like synthesizers, and bands were making records with orchestras. And we kept trying to figure out a way to bring those elements into the band, but not have other musicians. You know, we wanted to do it ourselves. And I think we were always, you know, very defensive about maintaining the troika, the three-man thing. Right. It's okay to bring a new sound into the band, a new idea, but we somehow have to generate that sound ourselves. So, and we became this sort of strange amalgamation of influences. I started playing keyboards. Alex started adding foot pedals. Neil started actually adding, you know, electronic drums that could trigger very different sounds.
Right.
And slowly that joke of being the world's smallest symphony orchestra was starting to become a reality, because we could bring orchestral music and textures into this three-piece hard rock thing. So that became quite a challenge and quite a lot of fun for us on stage too.